They told you the goal was to be liked, to follow your passion, express yourself, speak your truth. They told you vulnerability was strength, that authenticity would win people over, that being seen was the key to connection, and you believed them. That belief has cost you more than you realize. Because the moment you seek to be understood, you step into the courtroom, no longer a strategist, but a defendant. Everything you express can and will be used to classify you, predict you, control you. You're not being seen, you're being mapped. And once you are mapped, you are manipulable. You are not untouchable. You are naked in a hostile world, begging for recognition. Machiavelli never taught people how to be liked. He taught rulers how to wield perception like a sword, how to make themselves immune to public storms and personal betrayals. His world was not kind, it was exact. Morality bowed to necessity, reputation was war terrain, and survival was an art of controlled opacity. You don't need another reminder to be yourself. You need to learn how to be unreadable, because the true battlefield isn't physical anymore. It's social, psychological, informational. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's silent endurance. Sometimes it's in the fact that no one can find your lever. To become untouchable is not to be invincible. It is to be so ungraspable that no one knows where to strike. You present no handle, you leak nothing. They can't seduce, shame, or expose what they can't locate. Your very presence becomes a question mark, dangerous in its ambiguity. But understand this, there's a cost. You will lose comfort. You will lose the warm illusion of tribe. You will speak less and observe more. You will watch others form alliances based on weakness and take none of it personally. This isn't about being feared or adored. This is about becoming impossible to exploit. And it begins with relinquishing the need to be seen at all. Stop showing your coordinates. Most people move through the world narrating themselves in real time. Every reaction, every opinion, every frustration is broadcast online, in conversations, in their posture. They don't just live, they explain themselves constantly, and that makes them trackable. They mistake self-expression for strength. But in reality, self-expression is exposure disguised as freedom. It's a data leak. The more you speak, reveal, volunteer, the more weapons you hand the world. It's not honesty, it's ammunition distribution. This is why most people stay touchable, because they constantly mark their mental location. They offer conclusions about themselves. I'm an overthinker. I struggle with confidence. I just want people to like me. On the surface, it sounds earnest. Beneath, it's submission. They don't even realize they're offering the enemy a map, complete with flags, weaknesses, and vulnerable entry points. Machiavellian intelligence starts with disappearance, not disappearance from society, but from predictability. To become untouchable, you must stop supplying coordinates that tell others how to manipulate or comfort you. Understand this. The world respects mystery more than confession. When you are not easily labeled, the average person has no lever to pull. They become hesitant, confused by your neutrality. They start projecting, overanalyzing, respecting the void you maintain because they can't penetrate it. This is the power of becoming untraceable. In Machiavelli's doctrine, power is not the loudest man in the room, but the man whose intentions remain invisible. Even alliances are built not on sincerity, but necessity and appearances. Once you understand this, self-restraint becomes your fortress. You don't volunteer updates. You don't correct misconceptions unless they serve you. You let people guess, and in their guessing, they reveal their own position. It's not about lying. It's about controlled silence. That's the difference between playing a game and being the game. Replace the urge to explain with a calculated absence. Instead of saying, "I'm not angry," let them wonder if you are. Instead of saying, "I just want clarity," say nothing, and watch how their strategies shift in the unknown. This doesn't make you a sociopath. It makes you a strategist. Intentional ambiguity is a form of frame dominance. The moment you define yourself, you give others something to negotiate or attack. The cold fact is this: people only respect what they cannot predict. Predictability is comfort, and comfort breeds disrespect. The untouchable don't just withhold information, they design themselves as unfixed, unclassifiable. One interaction doesn't tell the whole story. Enemies try to locate them, but find only decoys and silence. Friends can't reduce them to one role or need. This creates psychological elevation, a quiet authority where people feel observed, not equal. You become a mirror. You reflect, but reveal nothing. Most people cannot tolerate this discipline. They return to oversharing not because they're courageous, but because they crave validation. They want to feel known more than they want to be effective. But here's the truth: you do not need to be known to be powerful. You need to be ungraspable. Withdraw your coordinates. Let the world feel your presence, but never your position. Give no labels, reveal no needs. Express only what serves your sovereign design. Speak only to place bait or to shut doors. The rest lives inside your silence. And those who survive by control and clarity will now have no method left to contain you. Kill the need to be liked. The average person lives under an unspoken prohibition. Do not provoke dislike. They shape their tone, choices, and image around being approved, mistaking it for safety. But in every dynamic, this craving for softness creates vulnerability. Because to need to be liked is to give others power over your behavior. They don't realize it, but they are bartering their spine in exchange for social warmth. They smooth every edge, over-explain every decision, smile when they feel doubt, and retreat when someone appears disapproving. This reflex isn't just weakness, it's posturing for permission. And those who require permission will never dominate a room, a process, or a narrative. This is where the untouchable diverges. The untouchable does not aim to be disliked. That would still be reaction. He simply discards the entire economy of validation. Likes, praise, agreement. These are not currencies he trades in. Because the deeper the need for external affirmation, the more readable you become. The more you try to be accepted, the more strategic you are not. Machiavelli understood that affection from the masses was volatile. One shift in mood and loyalty collapses. But fear, not panic, not cruelty, a subtle, structured fear born from distance and mastery, is stable. When you abandon the need to be liked, something dangerous happens. You become free from social choreography. You speak less, but when you do, it lands. You deny the expectation of immediate agreement, and people listen harder. You walk into a room knowing you don't need anything from it, which is why others instinctively offer. Needlessness radiates authority. It flips the terms of engagement. This is the architecture of untouchability, a presence that demands adjustment, not accommodation. To achieve this, one must commit psychological violence against the parasitic voice that still seeks applause. You starve it. You sit in rooms where people misunderstand you, speak over you, dismiss you, and you do not plead, correct, or chase. You let them underestimate you because you have removed your ego from the market. That is the crucial shift. Power is not gained through acceptance, but through frictionless indifference. This does not mean you isolate entirely. It means you selectively engage, and when you do, you move without flinching, without apology. You study group behavior, but do not beg for entry. You acknowledge hierarchy, but do not contort for position. You let others overplay their friendliness while you coordinate your influence in silence. And when people slowly realize they cannot manipulate you with approval, that their praise does not buy your shifts in tone or decision, they start to heighten their offer. They become more careful, curious, even anxious, because they no longer know which move secures your favor. Machiavelli called this making necessity into virtue, turning your detachment into a perceived strength, not a wound. You don't need to be the loudest in the room or the most visible. You only need to be the figure whose validation is unpredictable and rare. People chase most what they believe is reserved. Let others spend their hours curating their image for applause. You walk through with calm indifference, aware that your detachment is dominance. Your silence becomes a surface they project onto. Your lack of emotional hunger becomes a kind of gravity. It breeds respect, not from everyone, but from the ones who matter. If you want to remain untouchable, kill the side of you that still seeks love in every room. Replace it with signal control, every interaction filtered through strategy, not validation. Only then are you no longer an actor on their stage, but the architect of it, detached from the narrative. Everyone you know is captured by narrative. They don't just live their life, they frame it as a story. One they repeat in shards or monologues to anyone who'll listen. I've always been this way. I'm finally stepping into who I am. I've overcome so much. It seems harmless, even empowering. But every time a story is told, it becomes a scaffold that traps them. A cage crafted from selective memory, moral shorthand, and emotional momentum. And worse, every story invites editors. The moment you offer a narrative, you invite others to revise, challenge, complete, or weaponize it. This is the invisible mechanism of control. When you narrate yourself, others don't listen to understand. They listen to categorize. They listen to find angles. Even confession becomes a form of submission, not just to the listener, but to the past version of yourself you are loyally repeating. This is a fatal leak. Machiavellian sovereignty demands detachment from story, not to erase your past, but to stop filtering your identity through it, because an untouchable man holds no script. He is not here to prove something. He is not on a healing journey. He refuses the softened chains of identity, mythology. He is not a hero. He is a strategist. When you stop narrating, you stop bleeding control. You create psychological space. Others search for a handle, a pattern, and find nothing to latch onto. You taste that unemotional clarity Machiavelli wrote of the necessity of appearing fixed while remaining internally fluid. Understand this: most people curate their identities for sympathy or superiority. Both are ranks in the same prison. The sympathetic wants to be seen as wounded, evolving, brave. The superior wants to be seen as wise, enlightened, whole, but both are trapped in the same performance. Both are legible, predictable, manipulable. The untouchable discards both. He does not explain his behavior in terms of wounds or awakenings. He does not offer moral framing for his moves. He executes, observes, adapts, without requiring the applause of survival or the spotlight of transformation. And when asked, "Why did you do this?" the answer is silence or necessity. Anything else is soft bait for interpretation. Operating without narrative is unnerving to others. It breaks their rhythm. When you commit moves without moral justification, fixation becomes their burden, not yours. They spiral, trying to connect your actions to psychology or emotion, while you remain unbound from the fiction they need. This gives you a cold leverage, not through manipulation, but through structural advantage. Because every person clinging to their personal mythology can be coerced by threat to it, question their growth, mock their values, falsely accuse them, and observe how they bend to correct the story. Their ego will not allow contradiction. They will trade posture for control. But if you've detached, there is no ego left to bait. You do not need to appear good. You only need to remain outside their frame. This is how princes stayed in power. They formed no ideological marriage. They wore the mask necessary in front of one faction, removed it in front of another, and remained loyal only to results. That seems cold, because it is, but it works, and results do not reward sentiment. To become untouchable, you must sever from the temptation of self-story. Act without autobiography. Move without asking permission from your past self. Let people fill in their own explanation, and never correct it. What is left is quiet power. A man with no visible scar to exploit, no personal banner to shame, no vulnerable arc to target. Only the present move, executed without explanation, answering to no myth. Weaponize ambiguity. The average man sees ambiguity as a vulnerability, something to overcome, something to clarify. He prides himself on being direct, on being real, on laying it all out. He believes clarity earns trust. He believes transparency diffuses conflict. It doesn't. It eliminates advantage. Clarity is easier to manage, not respect. When people know exactly what you think, exactly what you intend, exactly how you'll react, they start planning around you, not with you, around you. The strategic cost of excessive clarity is that everyone can now negotiate against your fixed lines. But when you're ambiguous, they must guess, and guessing consumes energy. Machiavelli understood that ambiguity was never aimless. It was a technique. He advised rulers to remain unreadable, not because it was fashionable, but because power dies the moment it becomes obvious. This is where most people fail. They think being vague is the same as being weak or unsure, but strategic ambiguity comes from a non-emotional place, a place of control. It is not the result of confusion. It's the discipline of never showing your cards until the leverage is at its peak. Ambiguity shifts the burden. It forces others to reveal their position first. It creates social altitude. While they overextend themselves to understand you, you study them in silence. Their questions become signals. Their reactions become maps. You observe, without answering. This breaks common social logic, which tells you to explain, to smooth over, to signal intent. But when you withhold those signals, even slightly, something subtle happens. People become destabilized, not aggressive, just off balance. They can't calibrate themselves around you. They become self-conscious. They double-speak, overshare, ask again. Why? Because your ambiguity collapses predictable rhythms. And when you collapse rhythm, you create vulnerability. Not in yourself, in them. The illusion of certainty is a pacifier for the masses. Leaders who try to be overly transparent destroy their mystique. Friends who explain every behavior lose gravity. Partners who declare every thought quickly become dismissed. The untouchable doesn't offer resolution. He offers presence. Controlled, precise presence without full explanation. The way he moves, the way he answers, deliberate enough to signal intelligence, vague enough to prevent categorization. This is not about being manipulative. It is about structural advantage. You create trails without destinations, intent without commitment, invitations without delivery. The predator survives not because it announces its hunt, but because it moves without pattern. Apply this conversationally. Don't always complete the sentence. Let them lean in. Don't show all your goals. Reveal motion, never destination. Don't define what you are to others, even in friendships. Let their assumptions hang in the air unchallenged. Why does this work? Because people crave cognitive closure. And when you deny it, they either submit or expose themselves trying to force it. Think in frames. In every power dynamic, there is a frame, their version of how reality should operate. Your silence, your ambiguity, destabilizes that frame. You create your own simply by not following theirs. They don't know how to respond, so they start asking, chasing, adapting. That's the edge. Ambiguity, if maintained with composure, creates magnetic authority. You don't chase their understanding of you. You make their understanding work for you. The most dangerous figure in any room is not the loudest. It's the one who speaks with calibrated restraint, smiles without full context, acts without announced motive, answers in ways both true and incomplete. The untouchable masters this, because once you embrace ambiguity, you no longer fight on the field they chose. You become the field, control the terms of engagement. Most people react. They wait to be asked, pulled in, responded to. Their lives revolve around invitations from others, invitations to speak, to justify, to participate, to defend. And when those invitations come, they scramble to meet the frame already set for them. A frame is not just a context. It's a trap disguised as conversation. You step into their question, you accept their assumptions, and now you're dancing to a rhythm that's not yours. Worse, you think you're winning, when in truth, you're just reacting inside a script they wrote. The untouchable man sees this immediately. He never enters a dynamic blind. He does not answer to questions. He answers to terms. Because control is not about speaking last, it's about defining the space in which all speaking takes place. Machiavelli knew this implicitly. The ruler survives not by truth, but by direction. Whoever controls the narrative terrain controls perception, reaction, and blame. It's not about being right. It's about being first to set the rules, the stakes, and the consequences. Before you speak, decide the frame. Refuse victim frames, reject justification frames, sidestep emotional frames. When someone says, "Why are you so distant?" the common man explains. The untouchable man reframes. He doesn't answer the question, he dissolves the premise. Not everything is meant to be shared. Now the ground has shifted. The questioner must recalibrate. This is not cleverness, it's power discipline. When you allow others to define the context, you become the defendant. You've already accepted the idea that you owe them something: closure, apology, clarity. But the untouchable owes nothing. He controls the tempo by controlling what is even considered part of the conversation. His silence is not avoidance, it's direction. Controlling the frame means selecting what matters and what doesn't. It's not just verbal, it's posture, presence, pace. The one who moves slowest, speaks least, and resists interruption imposes structure. People will try to drag you into their tempo, their urgency, their mini-crises. They will raise their voice to prompt a reaction. They will use guilt to extract access. They will use questions to paint you into a role. Every time you bite, you lower your position. To become untouchable, you must sever the reflex to defend. Notice how people bait clarification. They invoke fairness. I just want to understand. Can you just admit? These are traps of tone, frames begging for consent. And when you submit, you've shrunk. You've entered their emotional choreography. Now, they're not responding to you. You're reacting to their definitions. Withdraw. Let them misinterpret. Say less on purpose. Create the sense that your presence is voluntary, not obligated. That your silence is not absence, it's design. That your lack of reaction is a boundary, not confusion. Every word should elevate your architecture, or you don't speak it. Machiavelli wrote of princes navigating treachery, not by resisting accusation, but by rendering it irrelevant. He knew the court never rewards purity, it rewards control. And control begins at the level of interaction. Refuse to be summoned by others' tones. Control entry, control exit, control vocabulary. If someone wants engagement, let them enter your terms, your tempo, your rhythm. And if you offer no terms, they wait, they orbit, not out of weakness, but because your composure has reorganized the power structure. This is the silent weapon of the untouchable. Expectation inversion. They expect explanation. You give removal. They expect confession. You give boundary. They expect pace. You give stillness. Control the terms of engagement, and everything within them answers to you. Deny emotional leverage. Nearly everyone around you is emotionally leverageable, not because they're broken, but because they wear their feelings on the surface. You don't need to torture them to control them. You just need to understand which emotion governs their behavior. Guilt, shame, fear of abandonment, hunger for respect. Once identified, they're predictable. Once predictable, they're movable. And most importantly, they're touchable. The untouchable understands this early. Emotion, when visible without control, is not intimacy, it is liability. The modern world rewards emotional openness with short-term empathy, but it punishes it with long-term hierarchy placement. You think people see your honesty, they see your handle. Machiavelli never asked a prince to be emotionless, only to discipline the emotional display. Inside, a storm. Outside, a mirror. You must separate your internal world from your external leverage. Because the moment your pain, desire, fatigue, resentment, or insecurity becomes readable, someone is already calculating how to move you. It may come wrapped in care, in friendship, even in affection, but it is still a move. To remain untouchable, you must develop emotional opacity. This does not mean numbness. It means encrypting your emotional landscape so deeply behind measured expression that no one can tell what matters to you until it's already handled. You do not publicly process. You do not bleed in front of those who can use it. You must become unreadable, not blank, not inhuman, but coded. When someone tries to guilt you into a reaction, delay. Delay in silence. Not, let me think about it. Not, that hurts me, but pure, controlled absence. Watch their frame collapse under its own weight. The emotionally leverageable rush to explain, I didn't mean it that way. Weakness. That hurt because I'm just passionate about. Weakness. I thought you cared more. Critical weakness. The untouchable doesn't fight the accusation. He doesn't reassure. He lets the accuser sit in their own narrative. He denies them confirmation. Your silence becomes gravity. Your composed stare becomes warfare. Few people can withstand the vacuum. Once you remove emotional visibility, your power multiplies. Why? Because no one knows what matters to you. They can't guess your priorities. They can't exploit your need to be held, heard, or forgiven. You have moved beyond their manipulative reach. Not because you don't feel, but because your feelings are buried under layers of strategic protocol. This makes others uneasy, and that unease is leverage. They begin to fear upsetting what they can't decode. They walk around your presence more carefully. They speak more thoughtfully. Not because you demand it, but because your unreadability creates an invisible set of consequences. You are no longer a participant in their game. You are the unshakable axis around which their behavior recalibrates. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must know how to not be good when the situation requires it. He wasn't advocating cruelty, but cold discernment. Goodness, love, vulnerability, these are tools to be deployed, not defaults to be lived from. The emotionally exposed die early in the court of perception. The emotionally sovereign outlast the storm. Develop heat under discipline, master rage behind your calm, store grief beneath your strategy. And when the world tries to provoke, bait, pour mouth, or flatter you, return nothing. Watch them collapse under the silence. Because the moment you cannot be moved emotionally without your permission, you have entered a higher command bracket of existence. You are no longer human furniture in their theater. You are the sovereign, staging the scene. Disappear into role. The average person insists on being themselves in every context. They call it authenticity, integrity, staying true to who they are. But this insistence is not strength. It's exposure masquerading as principle. Because being yourself offers no tactical flexibility. It locks you into one posture, one tone, one version of identity, regardless of environment, power dynamic, or objective. You become a static figure in a fluid battlefield, predictable, moral, and manipulable. The untouchable knows better. He doesn't demand the world accept his raw self. He disappears into role, not to fake, but to dominate. His identity is not some fixed monument. It's a weaponized costume, interchangeable depending on what is tactically required. He creates distance between self and expression, and inside that space is total control. Machiavelli called it appearing virtuous without being bound by virtue, not because virtue is useless, but because loyalty to appearance makes you vulnerable. The smart man knows how to seem honest, generous, kind, while staying loyal only to advantage. To the average eye, that sounds deceptive. Good. Let the average man fear disguise. The untouchable uses disguise not to deceive for sport, but to remain structurally immune to social sabotage. This is where the cold truth unfolds. If your behavior is tied to your true self, then anyone who disrupts your role also disrupts your identity. Now you're reactive. Now you're emotional. Now you're touchable again. But if your role is chosen, detached from ego, you can adapt without cost. You can be deferential in one room, dominant in another. You can agree where necessary, resist where useful. You can bend realities without internal fracture, because nothing is personal. Everyone else is trying to preserve themselves. You're playing with masks they don't even realize exist. To most people, identity equals consistency, but to those who understand power, identity equals utility. Sovereignty means being whoever the situation demands, without explanation, without shame, without leakage. This requires the death of the comfort impulse, the comfort of self-expression, of being known, of being recognized and reaffirmed. These are sweet poisons, soothing while they slowly strip you of strategic dominance. Every sincere moment may win you brief affection, but it lays bricks in a box you won't realize you're trapped in until it's too late. To become untouchable, you must decouple integrity from exposure. Your integrity is internal. It is the discipline to play roles without becoming them. It is the control to reflect what is needed and withhold what is not. You don't fake anything. You simply choose who sees what, when, and for how long. The court doesn't reward truth, it rewards performance. Never forget, everyone plays a role. Most do it unconsciously, poorly acted, driven by insecurity and emotion. The untouchable plays with full awareness. His silence, mannerisms, and tone are not traits, they are selections. He's not a person in a room, he is a tailored presence. This unnerves others. They can't quite tell who he is, but they treat him with caution, with gravity, because his refusal to be clearly defined transfers the burden of interpretation onto them. And most people flinch in the face of having to guess. When you disappear into role, you create separation between your authentic self, which remains untouched, and the facade you execute. You stop bleeding emotion into performance. You stop justifying your shifts. You start leading interactions with clarity, control, and cold fidelity to outcome. Let others waste time trying to find themselves. You become who is required, and in that shape-shifting calm, coated in roles and layered in masks, they won't touch you, because they won't even know where you begin. Operate without need. Most people don't realize how loudly their need speaks. It leaks through their body language, their timing, their eagerness. They don't ask, they signal. Their eye contact lingers too long. Their compliments are just too specific. Their presence comes with invisible strings. And in every social structure, the person who needs something is ranked beneath the one who does not. Need is gravity. It pulls you downward. It turns kings into consultants, killers into confessors. When someone's frame bends to meet yours, they've already marked themselves as a subject. And nothing reveals true need more than behavior that adjusts for approval, access, inclusion, or response. The untouchable kills visible need at the root. He does not beg, remind, or expect. He removes the anticipation reflex entirely, the inner pull that waits for reaction, response, reciprocity. Not because he doesn't desire, but because he will never signal from desire. If something cannot be moved by leverage, it is not pursued. Power begins with non-neediness, but sovereignty begins when even internal craving no longer distorts behavior. This is what Machiavelli hinted at with his talk of love versus fear. A ruler must be feared if love cannot be controlled. Translation: the desire to be loved makes you reactive, and the reactive man cannot govern others or himself. So the solution is not to be cold, it is to become self-contained. Do not expand for warmth. Do not bend for understanding. Do not explain yourself into their comfort zone. Speak once, act once, and let the silence after be their problem. The more you demand nothing, the more they offer: projection, confession, accommodation. That is the paradox. The moment you operate without need, people ratify your authority by trying to reestablish connection on your terms. Emotional self-sufficiency creates social gravity. Let others walk into the room hoping to be liked. You enter already having made peace with being misread. That detachment alone elevates your rank in every group. And when it becomes evident you're not waiting for approval, A new pattern emerges. People begin to qualify themselves to you. This is not psychological trickery. It's structural reallocation. Need collapses your frame inward. It softens your edges, rounds your words, makes your silence anxious instead of resolute. But when you operate without need, your frame becomes gravitational. Others bend toward you, not always with affection, often with tension, but always with attention. You must become comfortable with that space. The distance created by your detachment, it will feel cold at first. That is detox. Over time, it becomes weaponry. And here's the deeper layer. The more you erase visible need, the more your moves feel like inevitability to others. There is a difference between asking for agreement and letting people conform to your timing without request. Only one feels like leadership. The other feels like a plea. This discipline extends even into absence. The untouchable walks away without follow-up, ends conversations halfway, leaves questions unanswered, not to be dramatic, but because presence is not a gift they can demand. He does not rush to correct misunderstandings. He chooses silence over defense, ambiguity over reassurance, disappearance over desperation. Need disfigures posture. Non-need sharpens it. When you cut the invisible threads of craving for belonging, understanding, recognition, you stop bleeding momentum. Every word you speak becomes a selection. Every move is cleaner, sharper, costless. People fear untouchables, not because they are violent, but because they cannot be compelled. If you want this level of command, stop trying to be perceived correctly. Stop needing to feel understood. Stop folding yourself into places where your clarity must be earned through performance. Need nothing. Move anyway. That is how fortress minds are built. Cold sovereignty becomes the last frame. Let it settle. The untouchable does not emerge by accident. He is built, layer by disciplined layer, through subtraction and refusal. Then let that settle hard, because this is where most will flinch. They'll call it inauthentic, manipulative, lonely, cold, and they'll be right, but not accurate. This path is not a performance. It's a severance. You are pulling the roots of your identity out of the soil of public approval. You are rejecting the game of exposure, confession, and emotional merchandising. And yes, everything around you is engineered to pull you back into it. The second you become unreadable, expect resistance. They will test you, provoke you, bait you with guilt and warmth. They'll accuse you of changing. They'll frame it as arrogance, detachment, callousness, but it's really their own discomfort around an object they can no longer shape. Hold the line. Let them grieve the version of you that could be mapped, moved, and emotionally harvested. That version is gone, because the untouchable is not empty. He is full, just not accessible. No longer governed by impression management, he becomes a different species in the social ecosystem. He doesn't compete, he operates. And when he moves, it creates distortion, not because he's loud, but because his presence violates the unspoken rules. You are no longer a person among people. You are a presence that recalibrates the terms of social interaction. No one knows how to relax around you, because you've mastered composure that doesn't seek permission. This is what it means to become untouchable. You move through the world like a locked vault, silent, definite, uncorrupted by the public's emotional currencies. Their hands can't pry you. Their faces can't melt you. Their warmth can't seduce you into confession. They don't know what drives you. That's why they fear you. Because your detachment isn't a defense mechanism. It's a throne. And if your sovereignty costs you the comfort of being received, so be it. There are no thrones in the crowd. There are only mirrors, empty reflections, begging for recognition. But you are not a reflection anymore. You are the architect of response. From battlefield to conversation, from image to identity, you've shifted frames, not to dominate every room, but to be unplayed in every game. So now the question sharpens. You've learned how to become untouchable, but can you strike without being seen? Subscribe, because the next layer will break something deeper.